And as it were, the timing couldn't be better today because the Toronto Maple Leafs have hired a 28-year-old assistant general manager. They've fired 2 veteran people of the trade and decided to go for a young, relatively unknown guy. I've known Kyle Dubas for many years. And as it were, Kyle Dubas, and I'm going to say this to Frank, I've said it to you off air, he's a big fan of yours. He's told me in the past he's wanted to be on your Being Frank show. So let's tee it up right off the top. Frank, you're a huge Maple Leaf fan. I don't know if anyone wears it on their heart more than you do. What are your thoughts about the Toronto Maple Leafs hiring a 28-year-old?
I'm a very straight-up guy, and I don't like bullshitting. I really don't know much about this individual. I've heard nothing but good things. I've heard he's a stand-up guy. He's very knowledgeable, and I think it's a shocker. It's a 45-degree turn by Leaf management, and maybe Shanahan is showing how that he's got balls. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Mr. Shanahan. I mean that in a positive way, and that he's shaking things up and bringing some new energy, and youth is the future in every aspect, whether it's political, whether it's in business, and this is business. And you know more about this individual than I do, Perry. You need to talk about his accolades and talk about his strengths, and if he has any weaknesses, and that's a major role. I don't think anything as shocking as this has happened since Ballard's years, when he put a very young general manager in power, Gord Stellick.
So let me just give a little bit of background then about Kyle Dubas, then I will switch it over to Bill, because Bill has a little bit of insight into Kyle. He's known Kyle for quite some time. Kyle cut his teeth as working for Don Reynolds, a prominent player agent. Among his many clients are the player, it escapes my mind, help me right now, from Ottawa, went to play for Nashville. His girlfriend is
Mike Fisher.
Mike Fisher, thanks, Bill. Okay, so Kyle had worked for Don Reynolds for several years. When he was hired by the Sioux Greyhounds, it was considered somewhat of a surprise because of his age. I believe he was about 25 or 26 at the time. Even though he had a background in the Sioux, because that's where he's from, went to school in Hamilton, the fact that the Sioux Greyhounds would reach out and hire a relatively unknown guy, young guy, that was considered somewhat out of the box at the time. I would say now that the Toronto Maple Leafs hiring Kyle Dubas, again, he's still relatively green at this point in his career in the management level of hockey. I'd say this is, if it was considered out of the box then, this is like out of the park. So Bill, again, you've known Kyle Dubas for several years. You dealt with Don Reynolds. You dealt with Kyle on a personal level. Maybe you can first of all give me your interpretation of the hire, coupled with the fact that you've worked as an assistant GM. This kid is going from the Sioux, which is a hockey town. Now he's going into the cauldron of Toronto Maple Leaf hockey.
Yeah, I'll have to wait and see what his responsibilities are. From what I can gather, he's a very innovative kid who looks at hockey as something other than what it used to be, and is able to put together plans for his team as to what's the best way of reaching success. What it means to me is that Dave Nonis has fallen into the same category as Randy Carlyle, because when your assistant is hired by your boss, you better start looking for work. And that to me is the most significant event. What Kyle does from here on in will determine how much effect he's going to have on the Leafs. I would like to think that Shanahan, who spent a lot of time looking for someone who was young and aggressive and could bring some new things into the game, he found him, and this is the guy he chose. So it's up to Kyle to justify the confidence that Shanahan has put in him. There's no guarantee that he will do well at it. However, based on what he's done at the Sioux and how he's handled himself, I would like to think that he'll have a position for a while. And I always go back to the fact that this whole organization, you won't recognize it a year from now.
Listen, Billy, I want to ask you a question. Would it be a fair statement to say that the Sioux organization, Sioux hockey operation, and the Sioux brand in Northern Ontario is a big deal?
It's a big deal in the Sioux, I think, Frank.
Yeah, but it's a big deal in Northern Ontario. I mean, it's a lot of great players have come out of there. It's always been a huge fan base,
it's produced a share of players.
It's been a decent brand.
Yeah. Well,
So it's not a small operation. That's my point, Billy.
Yeah. No, it's not. I'm not. I think it's a good operation.
So
I go back to.
I'm saying that this guy's coming not from a small operation, a small identity. He's coming from another place where there's a lot of pressure, a lot of critique, and you're under the microscope in the Sioux. In fact, when Phil comes on today, he's going to be able to tell you that he was involved with the Sioux Greyhounds, and he had some issues, and the whole small city of the Sioux turned on him. I mean, it's a smaller version of Toronto.
Well, I suppose
as far as the how much the whole social realm or all the fan base really watches what that team does.
Yeah, they're very proud of their team, and they like it to do well. And I don't know what Kyle has done to make it do well recently in his 3-year tenure. Perry knows him.
But he must have done something
he didn't have
to get the Shanahan's eye or Shanahan's confidence to give him such an incredible and important position in one of the most successful franchises in professional sports in North America.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Frank. I think it all depends on how much he does and what he does. Is he going to be a stats guy who suggests programs for the Leafs to be better? Is he going to be up front and center and look after the player personnel and all of that? And if he is, then good for Kyle. But I at this point, I think this whole Maple Leaf organization is in a state of flux. There's a lot more pieces that will be moving before the end of next season. And that's just my speculation.
Can I ask you a question, Billy, and I want to ask the same question to you, Perry Lefko. Is this a very somber and very well-thought tactical decision by Shanahan, or is he in a state of panic, Billy?
Oh, he's not in panic. No. I would never, ever accuse Brendan of being that type of... I know I talk to people who I can't identify, but a month ago they were frightened to death around MLS and E as to what was going to happen. They knew that Shanahan was going to make some moves. They just didn't know who was going to be moved. And Frank,
so you're saying it's very methodical, and very well planned, and very strategic, tactical move that he's making now, bringing a very youthful young general manager into the fold of the MLS organization. Yeah.
Well, Frank, I was thinking of it this afternoon. I know both of the guys who were let go. Both good people, Claude Loiselle and Dave Poulin. They have been with Burke for a long time. What had they accomplished? 2/3 of 1/2 of nothing. Brendan couldn't go ahead with that group. And that's what he's now doing. Whether he's got Kyle as a building block or Kyle as midway up the triangle, I don't know. I'm not going to say. Perry knows him better than I, but I know that he's highly regarded. And as Shanahan said, I asked a lot of people in hockey who were some of the brighter young people in the game. And Kyle's name came up all the time. So good for Kyle. He deserves this opportunity. It is an aberration. Unless you're the son of the general manager, you don't get jobs at that age with that responsibility.
Now, Frank, if you're going to ask me the question, I'll say I think it's a move that he's thought about. What I'm a little surprised about, and I'm going to ask you about this, Frank, when a person comes in there at a high level of an organization of business, they usually spend about 3 months looking around, seeing what are the people I want to keep, what are the people I want to get rid of, and who are the people I want to bring in, because these are people I've worked with before, I can trust them, I know I could do well with them. So Frank, you're new into a business. Am I right by saying that? You're going to take a look at the existing personnel and decide who can I keep, who do I not want to keep, because in this case, he decided to keep Dave Nonis, he decided to keep Randy Carlyle, he's gutted the assistants in both, which to me are a little paradoxical.
I don't think he's keeping any of those guys. I think he just hired a hatchet man to cut their throats. I believe when you bring a new general manager in, he's your guy. he's the guy who's going to come in and take a big giant broom and sweep and put his people in. It's just like when you bring in a VP or a general manager is pretty deep in management in a business, in a corporation, or any type of organized business. And I believe, and I could be, I don't know that much about this man. I know that he's a very smart hockey guy, and he's flying up the flagpole really fast. And for Shanahan, in my modest view, and I don't even have a microbe of knowledge of hockey like Billy has, and that's why I asked him the question first. I've heard that he's very sharp. He's very, very bright. He reminds me of everything that I've read today as the guy with Brad Pitt in the movie Moneyball. Young guy, bright guy, and trying to help a guy like Shanahan, which is Brad Pitt in this scenario, in real life movie for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I really don't think Mr. Carlisle's job is safe. I agree implicitly, if I understood what Billy said, he should be looking for a new job.
And so
there's a new sheriff in town, and I believe he's going to hire his own deputies.
I don't think, though, this is my opinion, that this is not so much about Kyle Dubas. This is Brendan Shanahan is running this team. Whether Dave Nonis is around a month from now, 6 months, or a year, Brendan Shanahan is running this team. Whatever title you want to give him, he is the general manager. He'll make all the moves.
Guy on the horse. Yeah. Nobody else.
Yeah, and Kyle Dubas is there as kind of like a young setup guy, whatever, a guy who maybe look at some of the scouting.
I think he's going to be the guy who's going to go in and make decisions. You don't hire a guy in that position, Billy, am I wrong, who's not going to make decisions?
No, well, he's not going to take that position unless he makes the decisions. Look at the major decisions. He fired the assistants. Nonis didn't do that. He hired the assistants. Nonis didn't do that. He hired the new assistant manager. Nonis didn't do that. The only reason Nonis is there is because he's got a new 5-year contract, compliments of Tim Lawicki. And that's going to be disposed of when
that's a great point that you just made, Billy. Very perceptive.